This service really looks after or works with people who have some kind of impairment and people who have any kind of disability, whether it's physical, mental health, something in relation to a trauma or a learning disability. They have a different approach to doing things when they are learning, and my job is to really work with them to reduce the barriers to learning for them. So general classroom teaching and learning may not suit any one of these people, and I meet with them and talk with them individually about what works for them. They know, they're adults, they know what works best when it comes to learning. They know how best they learn, and if they're unsure, I provide assessment to help them along the way with that. And then once we've worked out how they learn best, I work with them and sometimes the tutor to help establish a method or a routine within the classroom environment that helps them get on with their learning and be able to participate in the courses that they've enrolled in. This might be using something like equipment or specialised software. It might be for some people having a reader-writer sitting with them and working alongside them to help them get the content on board. It may be looking at different strategies like mind maps and working with how to retain the information that they're learning. So we individualise in this regard for any learning program for any student, and I'm guided by that student because they know what works best for them. They're here to achieve, and as long as we can make it as straightforward as possible for them, that's the aim of this part of the service.
The journey for every adult learner is different. Some adult learners are not only faced with the challenge of study and the demands of life, but may also be trying to achieve while coping with a disability.
When it comes to looking at culture, I guess the culture, people with a disability have their own way of doing things, and they have their own experiences which very often mean that they will present with less confidence and less self-esteem because they've had a lot of hurdles within their lives, and now they're coming to tertiary education and they really are prepared to put themselves on the line and put their hands up and say, I want to achieve. And whenever they come to my or to the Disability Liaison Service, I respect the fact that it's taken a lot, they've overcome a lot of barriers before they even get to my office door. So I support them and advocate for them as much as possible. That means I might share information, if they give me approval, I'll share information with the tutor about perhaps what might be happening for them and help the tutor understand what's going on for them so that they can tailor their approach to the student within the class, and so the tutor understands what is going on for the student and why they might be doing things slightly differently, or why they might be asking lots of questions, or why they appear to be not paying attention when in fact they are.
Students who are faced with barriers such as physical disabilities may require a substantial amount of support from their learning provider. This is essential for the student if they are trying to achieve their learning goals.
A student that may come and enrol for study and faces a lot of barriers requires quite a bit of support, may require quite a bit of support, and particularly if a student is, say, physically disabled or has an impairment like blindness, there's a number of things that need to be considered by the institute as well as by the teaching staff. Tutors need to be aware of how is the student going to mobilise around the spaces that they're using while they're teaching, how do they modify the way they deliver their teaching to incorporate, for example, a person who is blind. So they can't stand and point to something on the blackboard. They need to be able to describe what it is they're working with and what the changes might need to be. They need to talk more about the content of their course as opposed to pointing and expecting that the student can pick up the information from the general conversation. In a lot of situations, the environment is important for students with impairment, and that might be as simple as somebody with a brain injury who can't bear to be in an environment that has a lot of activity and noise going on in the background, or that the lighting is too much for them, or they can't cope with multi-instructions and multitasks at once. So some students would benefit from instructions being given one at a time and in a slow and sequential order, and not being given the next instruction until they've completed the first one. Some students, for example, may benefit from being set up within a group study environment as opposed to working on their own. Because of a various impairment they have, other students may be not socially able but quite able to learn, and therefore need to be allowed to sit on their own and sit separately and keep themselves as part of the class but separated out slightly, and maybe take short breaks during a session, a 2-hour lesson.
Pastoral care is a critical role that the tutor plays in the life of the adult learner. It is important for the student that they are able to ask their tutor questions outside of class time, for example through email, set office hours or tutorials.
Tutors or facilitators who are teaching, you probably need to consider like the pastoral care, which is really you're dealing with the students outside of the classroom. I mean, one thing I'd recommend if you can set it up would be tutorial time, which would be time away from the classroom where students actually set time, where students can actually come, ask questions, maybe show you part of their assignments, just different things that maybe help with the students to outside the classroom. Another one would maybe consider your office hours. What is your attitude to students popping into your office? Do you look at it as that they're using your time or something like that? Or maybe you can have set office hours where students can come and again ask questions. But pastoral care is one of the things that we've done some research about, and it's about the feedback, that students need good quality feedback, probably if they can get it quite early on in the course, so even within the first 3 or 4 weeks of the course, and it can be ongoing. So maybe they have some type of quizzes or exams that aren't marked, that they just have some idea instead of just having one final exam. But the students need some feedback. They really want to know what's happening, what's going on. And another thing in relation to pastoral care that's important is the accessibility of the tutor. The attitude that you have. Are you going to make yourself accessible and you open to answering questions and student inquiries? Because for a lot of students, it's really important that they get that that they feel that they can actually use the tutor for getting some feedback.
Giving good feedback to adult learners on how they are progressing with their study is very important. For many students, it may have been years since they were last in a classroom, and at first, they may find it very daunting.
I think it's especially true for adult learners because, again, a lot of people are coming back, maybe women coming back who have raised a family and come back, or people who have switched jobs. They haven't had a lot of experience with tertiary education, and it's new to them, and in some cases they're nervous about it. Might be the first one in their family that's ever studied before. So again, giving that feedback and being accessible, I think, is particularly important for adult students. Yeah, I think it's especially important for distance learning because at least when you have face-to-face, the students can ask questions in the class in real time and ask that. With distance learning, I think you have to probably make a special effort. I know certainly with Blackboard, if you have it accessible, we have discussion groups, even things like if people could email you, because people may not want to put all their questions on discussion boards if they have private issues or something. So I think it's especially important that they call it student engagement, that engagement between the student and the facilitator is something that really needs to be considered.